Oh, hey, sorry. Just makes me want to dance a little bit. What's up, church? How we doing today? Okay, that's... All right, don't ever dance to start your sermon again, because you've already lost them, apparently. It is good to be with you today, church. Humans are kind of amazing in the fact that there's not many species that, like humans, know that helping others matters. That's why we create laws and rituals and rules to kind of help the vulnerable and those in need. In fact, the only other mammals that practice this sort of helping others generously are orangutans and bonobos, for what it's worth. But lately, scientists have done some research on birds. And there's a kind of a cool experiment of an African gray parrot and a blue-headed macaw that they have lately done. And they've discovered something remarkable, that these birds are incredibly intelligent, but when given the chance to help, the African gray parrots chose to help, and the blue-headed macaws chose not to. They ran this experiment where they had the two African gray parrots separated over here, and the two blue macaws separated over here, and a little window to pass between them. And the researcher would give one of the two birds on each side a token to exchange for a tasty nut reward. That's what you want for your Christmas present this year, a tasty nut reward. And they found that when the parrot or the macaw that did not get that started to chirp and wanted it and needed help, the gray parrot exchanged their token and gave the tasty nut reward to the other, while the blue-headed macaw exchanged the token, heard the cries of help, and hopped away. And so my question to you is, are you more like an African gray parrot or a blue-headed macaw? Really? Are you living kind of open-handed, willing to be generous, listening, hearing, and taking care of the cries that may be loud and the cries that may be soft to help? Because I do believe that more and more of our world teaches a blue-headed macaw theology and not an African gray parrot theology. And so over the next 40 days, we're going to take this journey, and I hope we become more like African gray parrots, honestly. Now, I'm not going to promise you that at the end of this 40-day challenge that you will be able to fly, though if any one of you is, please let me know. It'd be a great endorsement for the book, legitimately. But more important than flying, I promise you that if you take this 40-day journey, you'll end up experiencing more joy and fulfillment than probably you ever thought possible. So pumped today to kick off our newest 40-day challenge. Allison and I have been working behind the scenes 2 years on this generosity giving challenge project through researching and reading and studying and writing and rewriting and editing and all the good stuff. We're here today, and that's a big deal. I'm pretty pumped about that. And I am excited to walk this journey with you to hopefully help you become more generous. But the why even underneath the generosity is all the series we produce are series that we hope help you become greater disciples. A disciple is someone who is being and doing like their leader. And we've all said as Christians that Jesus is our leader. We want to be like him and do like him. And what you look at, if Jesus really is your leader, what you will find is he is the most generous person who has ever lived. And he will continue to be generous in your story over and over and over. And the more I scoured kind of all of his words, what some of you may know as the red letters in the Bible, when I looked at all of those letters and all of his teachings, I am convinced of this, that it is impossible, not improbable. I used impossible on purpose. It is impossible to be a stingy disciple. Stingy disciples don't exist. Because if you're being and doing like Jesus, you're generous. And so underneath this series, my hope is that you would become a greater disciple. We're looking at one of the targets to be a great disciple and to do like Jesus, which is generosity. And the more you take up not just generosity, but being a disciple and a follower of Jesus, the more joy you experience in this world. Because you were created to live with joy. And that is the collective problem that I think we're trying to combat with a lot of our writings, is that we're not experiencing the fullness of joy that Jesus came to give when we only believe and don't follow. And so the reason you're not is because you have an enemy that is shouting at you and trying to get you to follow his ways. And he's really loud. And one of the ways in which he's loudest is when he talks about generosity, money, finance, resource. And so I think it is high time that we come back and center on the words of Jesus and look at him and what he said and what he did and try to be more like him. Our theme verse for the entire series is 11 words of Jesus. Matthew chapter 6, verse 21. Jesus says, "For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." Come on, let's say that together. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Let's say it one more time, but I want you to memorize it because we're going to see if we can memorize it on right now in this place. So let's say it one more time. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. All right, take it off the screen now. Let's see if you can do this. Let's do it. 1, 2, 3. For where... Look at that. You guys memorized a Bible verse in church today. Good job. Give yourselves a round of applause. There you go. Yeah. Jesus is certainly giving financial advice, but more than that, he's giving heart advice. He's teaching you that your money and your heart are connected. And the world tells you that money is neutral, and in many senses it is. You can use it for good or bad ways. But what Jesus is saying is it's really powerful. And your money pulls your heart. Your treasure shapes where your heart goes. And so, church, if you want a heart that beats like God's, lead your heart there by putting your treasure there first. And so that's what we're going to be challenging you to do in these 40 days, is to lead with your generosity like Jesus. Now, some of you might say, well, Zach, I thought giving is more than finances and more than money, and it is. The phrase we use in church is time, talent, and treasure. Now, I really believe genuinely that we kind of tackled the time and the talent in our last challenge, which was all about serving. That's a generosity of time and talent. But truthfully, where a lot of us need help with generosity and where our grip is the tightest for many of us, it's around money and finance. So generosity is more than finance and money. But that's largely where we're going to be camping out for the next 6 weeks, because we've got a lot to learn and a long way to go, and because it's connected to your heart. See, I think in the church sometimes, and just in life, we wait for our hearts to be stirred first, and then we give. But Jesus is actually saying, no, give, and then your feelings will follow. And the reason why is if you wait for your heart to be stirred and feelings and then give, what happens is you hold on to it and get out into that world where your heart will be pulled. And my heart was pulled this week. I saw that something I loved as a child, I didn't know I needed it, I didn't know I wanted it, but it came back. And so all of a sudden, when I saw the commercial that the chili cheese burrito is back at Taco Bell, my heart was stirred towards that, and I went and got one. It's still pretty dang good. Whew. But you know that to be true. Where you put your money, your heart goes. I shared this story in one of the videos that goes along with the series of the first stock that I ever invested in. I remember investing, I was in my early 20s. Some of you might say, well, Zach, I thought you were still in your early 20s. Didn't have to be rude and laugh. Golly, I feel like an away crowd here at my own church. And the Huskers won yesterday. What's happening? Anyway. Oh yeah, that you'll cheer about. Great, awesome. See where our priorities are. But I was in my early 20s. I invested in Sirius XM radio. Spent $2,000 of my hard-earned dollars. And it felt great. I was an investor. Felt grown up. Felt like I was adulting. Felt like the right thing to do. And I'll tell you, I didn't know much about Sirius XM. I heard some tip somewhere and obviously got into it. But the moment I invested in Sirius XM, and I started checking the stock market so many times, And I would not only check the whole market, I for sure wanted to check in and see how Sirius XM radio was doing. Not only did I do that, I subscribed. I started telling everybody, this is a can't miss thing. You got to download this for yourself. It's incredible what Sirius XM radio is doing. I was analyzing quarterly reports the best I could, listening to CEO on interviews talking about all the things. And I was a brand ambassador of Sirius XM radio. And for a few weeks and months, it actually went up pretty high. And I was thinking, this is what's supposed to happen. And I was like, this is so cool that as I'm going into ministry, God is taking care of my retirement before I even start. Like, how cool. And then it started going down and down and down and down. And our life changed, and we needed all the liquid dollars that we could get. And so I cashed out at shares that were just under 50 cents. My $2,000 investment was like $112. It actually went further down to less. Can I get that water? I'm choking up talking about this. Yeah, can you grab me that real quick? This is sad. I didn't realize I still this much invested in it. Invested, that was a good pun. Okay. I actually looked today because I haven't looked for years, and they've done a whole lot of stock splits and stuff. And I checked as of this morning, that $2,000 would be worth like $1,400 now. So, I really didn't do well on that one. But God taught me a serious lesson. And you know this lesson to be true, that it's Jesus' words, where your treasure goes, what? There your will be also. And when it was going well, I was happy, and it was going down, I had buyer's remorse. And you know that to be true of things in your life. My heart was jumping all over the place with this company that for a short period I was super looking into. But the really crucial question I just want to camp on today, this is the big question for today, is what if the key to gaining a God-like heart is being generous first? Where your treasure goes, there your heart will be also. That's why in Giving Challenge, we're going to learn and practice generosity. Because as Jesus says, fools hear his words and ignore them, but wise people hear them and put them into practice. Some of you say, I want a heart that beats more like God's. It's beautiful, so do I. It's an awesome statement with great intent. But what if the key is not waiting for your heart to be stirred, but putting your dollars into causes God cares about, and then watching your heart be more aligned with his? And as you become generous, you'll see that living generously is one of the greatest keys to experiencing joy. And so our goal for this series, the true goal, is actually not that we'd raise more money for something, though when you give to eternal causes, by the way, it makes a massive difference. The true goal is that your heart would more align with God's. And so that's what we're going to do for the next 40 days. And we're going to see that actually, of all the places in Scripture, it's with our finance, the only time that God says, test me in this. So we're going to not only have a 40-day challenge, it's going to be a 40-day test, God. Take him at his word. And the reason we need this is because our world's ways aren't working. But I know that anytime we talk about money in church, like some of you are already like, uncomfortable. Because the church is talking about money again. And there's objections anytime you talk about money. Maybe you feel them rising up. Here we go again. This is only the second sermon series in Fremont, so there might be some new Fremont people like, seriously, in the second series, we're talking about giving? Some might say, shouldn't my faith and my dollars and what I do be private? Isn't my money my business? Didn't I work hard for this? So let's talk about it, because again, we live in a world that bombards us with its messages that sound like Bluehead Macaw. And if you think about the last time you got a little extra, maybe a bonus or maybe a tax refund or maybe some of that COVID money, right? Like everybody had a deal, everybody had a sale, and so a lot of you, spent that money on just something else, new shiny something, whether it's golf clubs or tech, new phone, whatever it might be. Or maybe some of you socked it away in savings and you thought, if I just save enough, then I'll feel secure. You see, the world says these things. The world says, protect what's yours. It's your nest egg, and nobody else is going to look out for you, so look out for you, yourself, and you. No, that doesn't make sense. Me, myself, and I. The world says spend it while you have it. You deserve it. You earned it. Treat yourself first. The world says give only if there's something in it for you. Make sure it benefits you. At least get a tax deduction out of it. If not, leverage your gift for something in the future for yourself. The world says money equals security. If you just save enough, invest enough, grow enough, then you'll be comfortable and all will be good. You'll be in control. And as we start listening to these, we then start believing some of the lies of the enemy. Things like, I don't have enough to give. I'll give when I make more. My gift doesn't really matter anyway and isn't giving somebody else's job who's got way more than I do. And yet, collectively, we're living in a nation with more prosperity than we've ever seen. And we wonder why we're still so empty and so anxious and so unfulfilled. It's because, ladies and gentlemen, when you follow the ways of this world, it promises happiness, but it does not deliver. It's a lie. And I personally have experienced this. And I will share parts of my story when it comes to generosity, because I have really bad parts and really good parts. And I've seen this to be true, anecdotally, subjectively myself, that a joyful, fulfilling life is following Jesus, especially being generous. But my hope and my prayer is that honestly, you would hear far less of me and that you would simply hear Jesus. It's why we spent so long getting ready for this, because legitimately, I know you have objections. I know I have objections when I hear some people preaching and teaching about generosity. I'm like, I don't know. Really, that doesn't sound right. And so I wanted to get every preconceived notion and idea out and simply ask, Jesus, what did you say? And more importantly, how did you model this for us? And so my hope and prayer, you're going to hear parts of my situation, my story, but would you allow Jesus' words to truly intersect with your life and be challenged by them? So here we go on this journey. So I want to start with this controversial statement for some of you. You are rich. Go ahead and say that. Say, I am rich. You are rich. Pastor Andy Stanley says, it's kind of funny. Rich people don't like to admit that they're rich, and people don't normally deny what's true. He says short people admit they're short, tall people admit they're tall. It's really not much argument on those. Athletic people usually admit they're athletic. Artsy people admit they're artsy. You can usually tell an artsy person because their car's a mess, their room's a mess, their life's a mess, but they're still happy, right? Extroverts can't wait to tell you they're extroverts. It's the one thing that introverts like sharing, that I'm an introvert. It's crazy, but when it comes to being rich, we deny it. It's I don't know if I'm rich. Really? Well, according to statistics, and this is a cost of living adjustment, all the metrics adjusted, that if you make $60,000 a year, you are in the top 1% of wage earners in the world. If you want to see where you fall, you can go to givingwhatwecan.org. Givingwhatwecan.org. You can plug in what you make, and it will tell you where you rank. Again, cost adjusted in the world. My hunch is that 90% of the people listening to my words right now are in the top 10% of wage earners in the world, and I think those numbers are very conservative. We are enjoying collectively a quality of life that few have ever had in the history of the world, and yet we still got problems with money. Mo money, mo problems. And the more Americans make, it's not true that the more they give. Americans give, on average, 2.1% of their income away to charitable causes. American Christians is not much better. It's 2.5%. So that means you get 40 tokens, and you keep 39, and you hop away after you gave the one. That's what that percentage is. And the biggest concern, not for everybody, but for most listening to me, is not starvation, but how do I not become obese in this nation? And I just want to kind of sound the alarm and say, it's obvious the world's ways aren't working, isn't it? I mean, when you look at what's happening, in a nation of collective prosperity, financial stress is completely normal. For many of us, we're still living paycheck by paycheck. We're struggling with credit card debts and interest on top of that. There's worry, anxiety, and fear. Even when the economy is strong, we've got words like inflation and recession in the back of our minds. And if you're in relationships, you've got tension in your relationships. And most research says that the number one argument about that couples deal with who are married is regarding money, finances. And so I just kind of want to stand up here and say, normal's not working. Can we be weird? If that's normal, I don't want that. I want something weird, something radical, something totally different that actually receives God's blessings and is joyful, that actually receives all that God has and can put his resources to work, and that doesn't have to worry and doesn't have to just wonder what's going to happen next week, but trusts that God will provide. That's what I want. And money is not the root of all evil. The Apostle Paul says it's the what? Love of money that is a root of all kinds of evil. Some people, eager for money, have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. What is Paul saying? The same thing that Jesus said, that money's super powerful and it'll pull you. And it's got the potential, if you're not careful, to actually pull you from faith. If you love it and if it's what you're going for most. So are you going for it most? How would you even know that you're going for it most? Well, if you care more about accumulating things and collecting as many tokens as you can, and you ignore the cries of the needy, might be a sign. If maybe you're younger and you're trying to set a career and you're really focused on career and income, and you're so focused on that you pour everything into work at the expense of taking care of your family, because providing for your family is more than financial provision, by the way, that might be a sign. Or if you look at your net worth and your stocks and your bank accounts more than you open up God's word, because that's where at the end of the day you find security, that might be a sign. Now, God is not anti-wealth or anti-blessing or anti-having nice things, but he is for your heart beating alongside of his and with his. And so we're going to look at what Jesus says to flip this, because we need it. And thank God he said a lot about giving and money and generosity and greed. In fact, we're going to learn these 5 countercultural statements of Jesus over the course of the next 40 days. That it is more blessed to give than to receive. The world says get more, and Jesus says give more. That's where you find happiness and joy. Jesus said life does not consist in an abundance of possessions. So rather than accumulating as much as you can, his main message that he came to bring was that this is not your home, heaven is. And so stop living like this is all there is. Hashtag, you don't only live once, you actually live twice. Now for a little while, there for a lot longer. Jesus says, to whom much is given, much is required or expected. It's the responsibility that's also the opportunity that God's given you much. And so cool, you carry a cool opportunity with you to use what he's given to you for the sake of his kingdom. Jesus says you cannot serve both God and money. Yet we're like, can I be the one that tries? Test me on that, God. And sadly, many have fallen from the faith. And Jesus says, what good is it for someone to gain the whole world and yet forfeit what's most valuable, their soul? And so these are the ways and the ideas of Jesus. This is the radical countercultural thinking that in a world where normal's not working, this is the weird that all of us need. And this is what Jesus is going to invite us into, and what you're going to be challenged to not just learn about, but to put into practice. Because his words were not just meant to be read aloud, and they weren't just meant to stay read on a page. They were meant to be practiced. And that's what we're going to do the next 40 days. So let me share with you a little bit of what this journey is going to look like. We're going to learn an acronym in the first week, because I love my acronyms. I think it helps you remember. And if you don't like acronyms, well, you go to seminary and start your own church. But the acronym we're going to learn is HEART, because it's about the heart. We're going to learn about giving happily, giving eternally, giving abundantly, giving regularly, and giving today. And as we're giving and as we're practicing this generosity, we're going to multitask, because as you're generous, what you're going to be doing at the same time is you're going to be trading a world way, a world idea, a world opinion for a Jesus idea, a Jesus way, a Jesus truth. And so we're going to unpack those 5 statements more in the first 5 days, and then we're going to look at them in greater detail for a week each. And so days 1 through 5, we're going to learn those 5 types of generosity, and then days 6 through 12 is where things ramp up. We're going to talk about giving happily, and as we do, we're going to trade the idea that we can find worldly comfort, and that's going to fulfill us. And actually, we're going to find that it's about godly contentment. Being content in what God has done and what he's doing right now, and that's where true happiness comes from. Then we're gonna look at giving eternally in the next week, and remember again that it's not wrong to own things in this world, but your primary function is a steward, not an owner, because you're here for just a couple of nights before you go on to something better. Then we're gonna look at giving abundantly. We're gonna look at how do we trade this scarcity mindset that somehow creeps into our nation for an abundance mindset. A scarcity mindset says, I don't have enough. I'm afraid. I'm not sure where it's going to come from. Abundance mindset says God has supplied all my needs, is supplying, and will supply. I don't need to worry. Then we're going to look at giving regularly, trading the idea that I need to control as much of my money in my own ways as possible. And actually, I just want to be obedient to God. I want to put regular generosity habits in my life. And then finally, that last week, we're going to look at giving today, being on the lookout each and every day of what it looks like to be generous. So rather than grasping for more, another word would be greed. Rather than living with greed and what more can I get, how can I just simply be grateful for what God and thankful for what God has already given to me? It's going to be a fun journey over these 40 days that, again, it's a finance series, it's a stewardship series, but more than anything, it's a heart series. I want your heart to beat like God's. And he gives us the wisdom for how to do it. And so we're going to learn it, and we're going to try our best to do it. And we're probably going to have ups and downs. And I understand that there's a lot of you that are feeling challenged already, and I'm cool with that. Because Jesus talks a lot about finances and money and generosity and greed. And so we ought to be able to talk about it as well, because it's a really valuable part of being a disciple. So let me answer a couple questions that I think you're probably anticipating. First one's a big one. How much, Zach, are you challenging me to give? What do you want? Just tell me what you want. I'll check the box and I'll be done. Can we just do that and move on? So here's what we're going to be doing over the series. Through the sermons and the small groups and the books that go along with it, you're going to be challenged to give 5 gifts. We do want to get those generosity muscles going. And so we're going to look at giving happily, giving eternally, giving abundantly, giving regularly, giving today. So you're going to be challenged to give 5 gifts. My promise to you, though, is you will never be challenged to give a specific amount. Because a $10,000 gift might be a drop in a bucket for somebody, whereas $100 might wipe somebody's savings account out or their Sirius XM stock, if you're like me. So I'm not going to challenge you. Now, I may guide. Can we be your pastors? And that's what. Can we guide you? Yeah. But at the end of the day, don't ever listen to me or Pastor Seth or Pastor Greg if we're saying you should give this amount. What we're saying is it's not the same for everybody. Be generous, but at the end of the day, what we're going to be challenging and guiding you to do is to ask God, what does it look like for me to be generous? And all I'm saying is be obedient to what God puts on your heart. So if that eases anything for you, let that ease the tension. So you'll be challenged to give 5 gifts. The 4th gift is that giving regularly week. And you will be challenged to give a regular or recurring gift for God's kingdom. And that may be here at King of Kings, or it may be elsewhere that God puts on your heart. And the reason we're challenging you to do that is because as awesome as it would be for you to crush these 40 days does not make you a generous person for a lifetime. It probably made you generous for 40 days. And giving randomly, haphazardly, or when our hearts are stirred, is actually not what we want. We want you to give first and to have your heart stirred more towards God's. So that's the first question. And secondly, what's a good next step for me today? If I had 3 words to summarize it, it would be go all in. And so what that looks like for me is grab a book. We have free books at our campuses, and so if you didn't get one yet, grab one. There's one free per family. There's also kids' books available as well, and so this is something that you can actually do together as a family, and that's the second point, is do the daily challenges. The first 5 days are very introductory. In fact, tomorrow is day 1, where you're reading the introduction, and Tuesday is day 1, and then every week we'll start on Sunday with the next theme. But do the daily challenges. There'll be some journaling, some writing, some exercises, some practical budgeting things, and at the end of it, a challenge for you each week to give a gift that God puts on your heart. Third, join a Connect group. All of our Connect groups are going through this material. It was kind of fun to create these videos, and I think it's always fun when you watch a video. You'll recognize some places here in Nebraska and around that the videos were filmed in. That's really awesome to be in community, though, and to talk and challenge one another. And then fourth, choose church. You did today. Awesome, I'm glad you're here. But like a good Netflix or Hulu show that might come out with a season that maybe has 6 episodes, if you want to get the most of that season, you don't watch episode 1 and 4 and 6. I don't know what that was, but 1, 4, and 6. You watch them all, because if you miss one, you miss something. And so commit to coming to church, being here. You're here today, do it the next 5. It not only will be great for the 40-day challenge, but that's a rhythm, by the way, that leads to human flourishing for you and your family, just so you know. And if for whatever reason you can't be here, we understand. And it's why we have an amazing tech team that makes these messages available on our website and our app. And so commit for 40 days and see what happens. I kind of love looking at random things, if you haven't noticed, and finding gospel in it. And I think, like, if a parrot can give up his or her food and their reward when the other parrot couldn't offer them anything in return, is that not a beautiful picture of the gospel for us, guys? That Jesus Christ heard our cries for help and left his riches in order to redeem us and make us right. He didn't just collect tokens and hop away. He legitimately got off of his throne, came down into the world, and was promised that he could have anything of this world right here and now. He could have had the greatest now world of anybody of all time, and he just kept refusing it. A verse that summarizes this so well is 2 Corinthians 8, verse 9. For you know the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, that though he was what? Though he was rich, yet for your sake he became what? He became poor, so that through his poverty you might become rich. And that's the heart of generosity. It started with Jesus. He was generous first, and so we're generous in return. And if I'm real with you, I hate birds. Yeah, we had one once, a Quaker parrot, and it was one of the worst decisions our family's ever made. The other 3 made it without me, which is just saying, maybe include me in those decisions in the future. But anyway, Sadie, our Quaker parrot, has been rehomed to a Christian Colorado home. Praise God. It's a win for everybody. And I think, gosh, if birds can get this right, what about the apple of his eye and his most prized possession? That in this story, which I hope you hear throughout the book, that we were created at the very beginning in this image to have a heart that beats like his. And for whatever reason, the enemy came at us and lied to us and showed us the things that this world could provide, and we fell for it. And when we did, our heart went towards that. So much so to a place that many of us now have had in our life, or maybe even right now, are calling out from a deep, dark pit, a cry for help. And thank God that he didn't just hop away or stay seated on his throne. He didn't just give up on us, but he got up and gave up his life for you and for me. This is the generous Jesus that I want to be more like, that you want to be more like. And so today, I know we're going to be asking you over time to give and to open your hands and to experience this incredible, fulfilling, joyful life that comes through generosity. But the first step is, gosh, if you've never received his grace, the greatest gift that he paid not with some money and with tokens, but with his blood, gives it to you today.
So I would ask all of you, we're going to be doing this later with our hands, giving away, generous, generous, generous. But will you put your hands like this where you are? And will you just receive? Dear Jesus, I pray that as our hands are clasped together, that we would receive the biggest and largest helping of grace that we've ever received. That your gospel truth can shine in our lives. That, Lord, together we come as a family and say, we need you, we're sorry, and we thank you that you died for us so that we could live again for you. And we intend, we desire, and we will do our best to follow after you. Not for accolades and not because someone else is telling, but because I want a heart like yours, Jesus. It's in your name we pray, and together the church says, amen.